In Tolkien's world, the stories of Faramir and Boromir provide some of the deepest meditations on both the strengths and shortcomings of the race of men. And in the fates of these two brothers, I think we can see a lot of ourselves. Like all humans, so many beautiful contrasts and contradictions are woven into their stories. On the one hand, we observe noble ambition turn to power lust, and on the other, we also see reserve and self-doubt form itself into a remarkable shield against dark forces. So today, join me in taking a look back at the lives of Boromir and Faramir, and observing the way in which they form beautiful inversions of one another. Boromir, Captain of the White Tower. Boromir is the prototypical warrior leader. He is strong, brave, and partial to a bit of well-earned grandstanding every now and then, such as when he defeats the forces of Mordor at Osgiliath. But above all, he is a great leader of men, and widely respected, not only for his physical prowess, but, crucially, for his goodness, with Aragorn describing him to Frodo like so. Your road and our road lie together for many hundreds of miles. Therefore Boromir will also be in the company. He is a valiant man. I've read some criticisms of Peter Jackson's depiction of Boromir along the lines of, the movies make him out to seem weak and evil, and like Frodo's main antagonist. This is a fair criticism. The first time I watched The Fellowship, it seemed that, physical strength and bravery aside, Boromir was constantly coming up short, and was depicted as a man bordering on pathetic, with little residue of his goodness remaining. However, I do think this comes with the territory of adapting a sprawling 1,000+ page epic into a concise set of movies. And on rewatching, I do get the sense that Jackson tried to use the camera and costume to reflect the greatness and goodness of the man, in place of explanation through dialogue or scene work. He is regal and noble from head to toe, and from a cinematography point of view, he stands out like no one else in The Fellowship. Faramir, Captain of Gondor. And where Boromir in all his glory stood out from the crowd, Faramir in so many ways does his best to camouflage himself and pull back into it, in complete stealth and self-effacement. Frodo's and Sam's first sighting is described like so, clad in green and brown of varied hues, as if the better to walk unseen in the glades of Ithilien. At once, Frodo thought of Boromir. To me, this description is striking because it captures how Faramir is so different from Boromir in the way that he tries to disguise himself amongst his surroundings, and yet he carries that undeniable fraternal connection in everything he does. They are so different and yet so similar. Like two sides of a perfect equation, each inverting away from the other, but each sharing the same axis of nobility and goodness. They share a brotherly bond that binds them together, even when their lives move in tangent to one another. Again, there have been criticisms of Jackson's depiction of Faramir. In the books, Faramir, in sharp contrast to his brother, has little internal conflict with regards to the ring. As he states to Frodo, "I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway. Not were Minas Tirith falling in ruin, and I alone could save her so, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory." And yet Jackson seems to overlay the neuroses of Boromir onto Faramir. Faramir seems set on bringing the ring to Minas Tirith at all costs, and he struggles with a desire for the ring. Jackson almost seems to want Faramir to be a sort of Boromir 2.0, which is certainly not the case in the books. I suppose this again speaks to the richness of Tolkien's texts. You could have an entire set of movies and books just dedicated to this fascinating relationship between these brothers and their father Denethor. It's Godfather-esque in the way that you have siblings who love each other, and yet amongst whom there exists tension when it comes to unspoken questions of succession and earning the respect of the fatherhead. And it's not necessarily to Peter Jackson's discredit that in 3 movies he was unable to fully capture the genius of Tolkien, and chose to make certain creative changes in pursuit of compressing things down a bit, although it is of course a shame that we lost the full weight of Faramir's character in the movies. The impact of the One Ring. The qualities of both Faramir and Boromir are brought tightly into focus by the presence of the One Ring. And this gives us an interesting look into the mechanics of the ring, and indeed the mechanics of absolute power more generally. When we look at Boromir, we see a man who is decorated, powerful, and wants above all else to save his city of Minas Tirith and to take the fight to Sauron. Taken in isolation, these are brilliant qualities, but the ring amplifies these qualities and twists them, making them a perversion of what they should be. A righteous use of power becomes a sort of thirsty power lust, and his deep-seated desire to defend his country leads him to try to steal the ring from Frodo, which puts the entire mission in jeopardy. But with Faramir, the ring has nothing to grasp onto. What, after all, is stealth? It's a stepping backwards, a use of negative space, an absence. And how do you dial up an absence? You can't. What do you get when you multiply by 0? 0. I'm not sure if Tolkien touched on this, but in my observation, this is why Faramir was able to be largely impervious to the ring. As Denethor quips to Faramir, a chance for Faramir, Captain of Gondor, to show his qualities. And here he is clearly alluding to the qualities that we so admired in Boromir. The great irony being that when amplified and twisted, these were the very qualities that proved to be his downfall. Whereas the qualities that Faramir demonstrated, qualities that are less glorious and shiny and eye-catching, in fact proved to save both him and the quest for Middle-earth. Conclusion. When I think of Faramir and Boromir, it calls to mind this George Eliot quote: "The growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and that things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been, is half owing to the number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs." Faramir will of course be remembered, but in the essence of the quote, he does the right thing, even when doing the right thing costs so much, but pays back so little in terms of thanks and recognition and glory. For Boromir, he could have been the man who claimed the ring for Gondor and vanquished the enemy, a story that would echo through the halls of time unto eternity. Whereas in reality, in Faramir's case, few will remember the man who said no to the ring. And yet, it's in these quiet acts of resistance that lies the fate of the world. Thanks for watching everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope it gave you pause for thought, I hope you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.